you treat me right. Way oh, way oh. Boy, take a chance, we live me right. Way oh, way oh. I could be the best thing in your life. Way oh, way oh.
What does barrier in communication mean? When an information, message, datum, or order isn't understood by the receiver as intended by the sender due to some obstacle, hindrance, or problem in the process of communication, it is termed as barrier in communication. Barriers in communication vary company to company, office to office, region to region, or person to person. However, the common barriers discussed in various books and video lectures as well as on different websites are here under linguistic barrier, semantic barrier, language barrier, physiological barrier, personal barrier, psychological barrier. Emotional barrier, attitudinal barrier, interpersonal barrier, perceptual barrier, cultural barrier, social barrier, organizational barrier, systematic barrier, status barrier, physical barrier, environmental barrier, gender barrier, technological barrier, inappropriate medium barrier, climatic barrier, systematic barrier, blah blah blah. These so-called barriers confuse and frighten the students, become a big barrier for them to learn the barriers in communication. Nevertheless, if you know English language well and think deeply on the aforementioned barriers, you will conclude that most of them are synonymous of one another. In other words, different terms have been used by different peoples to refer to the same problem. For example, semantic, linguistic, language and speech barriers are not four problems in communication but one problem with four titles. Likewise, psychological, emotional and attitudinal are not three barriers in communication but one barrier with three names. So how many types of barriers are truly there in communication? All barriers mentioned above can be classified into the following 8 types. Semantic, language, linguistic, speech barrier. When the sender uses a word, term, dialect, language, accent, pronunciation, idiom, proverb, metaphor or any figure of speech or any multi-meaning term which the receiver doesn't grasp clearly or vice versa. Such a problem is called a semantic barrier in communication. Number 2, psychological, attitudinal, emotional, interpersonal, perceptual barrier. When a problem arises in communication due to emotions, feelings, or illogicity, it is termed as psychological barrier in communication. For example, the sender speaks in anger, anxiety out of jealousy, inattentively, thoughtlessly, without preparing well, bashfully, or fearfully. And the receiver is arrogant, having a different point of view, dissatisfied employee, inattentive, or is in bad mood, and thus the communication doesn't succeed as intended. Number 3, physiological or personal barrier. When the communication doesn't succeed as expected due to the poor eyesight, poor hearing power, poor memory, ill health, laziness, or some other problem related to the body or health of the sender or the receiver, it is called a physiological barrier in communication. For example, sender says, "Where do you live?" and receiver, having hearing problem, he says, "I am going to temple." He answers wrongly. Number 4, social or cultural barrier. When the communication doesn't succeed as expected due to the social, religious, political, ethnic or cultural background of the sender or the receiver, it is called a social barrier in communication. For example, a boss hugs his female employee to appreciate her performance, but she terms it as eve-teasing. A Hindu is served beef at lunch by his American colleagues and he labels it as an insult to his faith. A Muslim girl is asked to reveal her face at a meeting with the director and she thinks it an attack on a religion. Number 5, organizational systematic status barrier. The common misconception is that a humble, informal and friendly boss is a weak boss. That is why most bosses in companies behave rudely, speak less, provide insufficient information to subordinates and shout more. The result is that bosses hide their faults and mistakes from their staff in order to maintain their impression, and the staff doesn't feel confident to communicate honestly, knowing that honesty will not be appreciated by the angry bosses. This problem in communication is called organizational barrier in communication. Lack of smart supervision, insufficient training to the staff, undefined roles and responsibilities of the staff, pride of holding higher posts and inferiority complex in holding lower posts, etc. intensify this barrier. Number 6, physical, environmental, climatic barrier. When the receiver doesn't understand properly what the sender conveys due to a noisy environment, unbearable heat, biting cold, uncomfortable seating arrangement, suffocating place, etc., it is called physical barrier in communication. Number 7, Gender barrier. No matter how much we shout that men and women are equal, it is never true in the practical world. There are always things which a male employee can't share with a female employee unless they are in an intimate and questionable relationship with each other. Women have entirely different mentality, sensibility, nature, physique, habits, dress code, language, heart, and conscience from those of men. For example, a drill master can't ask a sweating female training commando to exercise naked, or a male doctor can't be boldly informed by every girl patient about many things related to her private organs, or every female surgeon doesn't feel comfortable to teach male trained doctors about the reproduction in detail. Number 8. Technological inappropriate medium barrier. When the sender uses latest technology and the receiver uses outdated one, and that causes problem in communication. Such problem is termed as technological problem in communication. For example, I am a Kashmiri and the internet speed often sanctioned from my region is 2G by the government of India. If I join a video conference hosted by my American colleague, I can't understand properly all the information discussed in it. How to overcome such barriers? Well, it is one more topic for below average learners to memorize a long list of techniques supposedly used to overcome the barriers in communication. However, if you are a witty learner, you just need to use a simple common language, treat your emotional, social and biological problems, create friendly environment at workplace, minimize environmental and gender-based problems, and finally, make the use of latest technology in order to overcome the various barriers in communication.
You look like a guy who could treat me right. Way oh, way oh. Boy, take a chance, will you let me ride? Way oh, I could be the best thing